You're only as good as the last person that remembers you. You're listening to AMI Audiobook Review on AMI Audio. I'm your host, Jacob Szymanski. With me is Ramya Amathan.
Great quote. Great quote.
And we're going to get to that because it's literally the opening line of this book. Rams, today's guest has been making appearances on a bunch of AMI shows for a little while now, but he's recently dipped his toes into writing. From Potential to Purpose, Your Guide to Authentic Connections is his latest project. Let me read to you the synopsis, just to make sure we're all on the same page here. In From Potential to Purpose, Marco Pasqua, accessibility advocate and inspirational speaker, shares his personal journey of overcoming obstacles and finding true success. Born with cerebral palsy, Marco defied expectations and built a life centered around freedom, creativity, and connection. Through raw personal stories and insights from his groundbreaking CUBE principle, creatively using your best energy approach to life, Marco provides a roadmap for readers to life to mark their own authentic energy and creativity. This book isn't about chasing traditional versions of success, money, fame, success, or accolades, but about understanding what truly matters, the relationships you build, the resilience you develop, and the meaningful impact you can make. With a unique blend of personal reflection and actionable strategies, Marco guides you to discover your purpose, rise above challenges, and embrace your fullest potential. Whether you're an entrepreneur, advocate, or simply someone seeking to make a difference, this book will empower you to harness your energy. Embrace your unique abilities and forge authentic connections that will transform your life. Marco Pasqua is an entrepreneur, accessibility consultant, and inspirational speaker. Born with cerebral palsy, he's transformed obstacles into opportunities for growth, advocating for accessible and inclusive environments with a dedicated passion. Marco, thank you so much for coming on.
Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you to you both. And I'm just so blown away. First of all, that the day is finally here where, you know, the book is almost released, and that you both had an opportunity of being among a couple of the first people in the world to have a read of the book. So
Nice.
I really hope you enjoyed it, and thank you very much for the opportunity to come on the show.
We're also the first people to get to pick your brain about it, too.
Yep.
You are.
So, like I mentioned off the top, the quote that I read is the very first line of this book. You're only as good as the last person that remembers you. Why did you make that the very first line of your book? Clearly,
It
it's
sounds pretty
meaningful.
savage.
It is, and you'll know from reading the book that I say that I don't actually know quite where I remember hearing that quote for the first time. But the reason why that quote stands out to me rather is because, you know, you can do so many things in this world, but how others see you is a reflection of the impact that you've made. And so I always say, like, you can do all these things, you could chase accolades your entire life, but it's really the people who you've impacted in your life or that you influence in your life who are going to remember and be the storytellers of your life long after you're gone in terms of creating your legacy. So I always kind of approach everything I do in my life as, how am I going to be remembered, and am I doing the right things in order to, you know, cement that legacy? Not because I want to chase accolades, but because I actually want people to remember me as a good person, as somebody who tried to do my best, as a human that makes mistakes, but that's okay. And so that's why I wanted it to be the opening line.
Can I ask a tough follow-up question?
Of course.
Is this the same or different, or how is it related to caring what people think about you on a more meta level? Like, you know, people pleasing, or thinking like, am I doing things right? Do these people like me? Am I likable? That kind of stuff. Because
Sure.
I think that the both can feel pretty similar.
They can. However, I think what would differ about this in terms of, it's actually not about caring about what other people think about yourself. It's about reflecting on your own self-image and how do you see yourself? How do you see your journey and the ways in which you interpret the struggles that we face in life that ultimately can lead to our successes as well. I think that if you take stock in your own life and you have gratitude for the things that you've experienced, we talked about it on Kelly and Co. My first appearance a couple of weeks ago, where I said that it's not really about necessarily caring what people think about you, but more so just like what kind of impact, because you were saying like it doesn't help when people say to you, oh, things will get better, oh, don't worry, things happen for a
Yes.
reason in life,
Yeah.
and I said to you at the time, yes, although that can sound annoying and it can seem frustrating to hear that, I say this in the book, there is no win and lose, there's only win and learn, right? And the things that we learn in our life, yes, you can experience failure. Failure is a real thing. But at the end of the day, what did you gain from that experience? What did you learn from that experience? And you'll learn in the book there's a lot of time that I take to reflect on what can I gain from even the darkest experiences in my life.
So clearly, you have a lot of things to say here. You're an opinionated guy. You're pretty passionate. So why did you decide to write this book? What spurred you on?
Oh, thanks, Jacob. Well, to be honest, people kept asking me for years, as I've been a professional speaker now for the past 12, 13 years as part of my business. And people kept saying, well, Marco, aren't you going to do the traditional thing that inspirational or motivational speakers do and sell a book at the back of the room? Oh, today only. If you buy it now, I'll give you a discount, that kind of thing. And I always hated that to both of you because I hated the dirty car salesman approach to most people in the motivational industry where they were harping on people for their insecurities, and they were like, I can make a profit on the fact that you feel bad about yourself. And I was never that kind of person. And so I said, if people really value the things I have to say on stage, they're going to approach me afterwards and say, I want to learn more. I want to learn more about your backstory. Well, enough people kept saying, do you have a book that accompanies many of the stories that you share on stage? And I said, well, no, that's not really my goal. And they said, well, why not? Like, if you had the book, I would buy it. And I said, well, if it's something that you legitimately want, then of course I can have that as something that's there. And enough people approached me and said this that finally I said, you know what, I'm going to practice my own mantra of creatively utilizing your best energy, the cube principle, and say, even if I say I don't have time to write a book, do I have time to write a page a day? Now, if you break things down and you say, well, I can write a page a day, that's easy. Well, then after 365 days, that's 365 pages, and that's a pretty darn good book, right? And so, it's not about looking at the large task of, oh my goodness, I got to write a book, but it's what message do you want to get out there? And if it's important enough, then you'll make the time.
I guess if people really genuinely want it, then you'll give it to them. And this is how long it took for you to put it out there.
It took about 6 months from start to finish, and I didn't do it alone. I used an editorial team through the publishing company that I utilized that really helped to get clarity on the themes for each chapter and say, have you thought about this, or what were you trying to say about this? I really got to know the editing team, and they started to understand my vision for what the book really should be. And again, people say, well, Marco, you're 39 years old. Like, why are you doing an autobiography? I said, it's not an autobiography. There's definitely some personal stories, but this is just the beginning of my journey, right? And it's really to make things tangible in a relatable way. You can tell for those who seeing the video of this and are excited, in my background of my office there is memorabilia of Back to the Future, and 1980s and 90s pop culture surrounded me, and I really wanted the book to be an embodiment of those who know me as a person. They say, oh my god, this book is so Marco that it's not even funny. And so I use humor, and I use 1980s and 90s pop culture references throughout the book because I wanted to make it relatable. I didn't want it to be a boring read. I wanted people to be excited to flip to the next chapter.
And that's people who do or don't know you, right? That's the thing about these books. Like, there are the people who know you who are going to say that's so Marco. And then there's the rest of us who are like, interesting. What does this guy have to say? And why do I care about the way that he's saying it? Now,
That's
do you
right.
have any hot takes on people writing autobiographies who are young? There are a lot of celebrity memoirs out
Good
there.
question.
We've talked about
Oh,
them.
goodness. Well, let's be honest. Like, I think a lot of the celebrities that are out there, especially the A-list celebrities that are in Hollywood or even presidential candidates or things like this, a lot of them are actually utilizing ghostwriting services. And listen, there's no shade in using a ghostwriter as so long as you're getting that deep experience. But I think what really bothers me is when you're writing an autobiography and it seems so hands-off, that really you're just kind of passing off a box full of notes to a potential writer and saying, do your best to emulate my writing voice. And anyone who knows good storytelling knows that if you're a storyteller on a stage and you're a storyteller in literature, that you should be able to hear your voice, the way in which it would sound, and your cadence in the way in which you write. And I think that the dead giveaway for a lot of people who don't write their own materials is that it just doesn't connect. It doesn't seem the same way as that they interview, for television as it does in their writing material. And yeah, you can have variances as a writer, but I mean, listen, everybody and their uncle wants to write an autobiography, especially those who are, in the celebrity sort of sphere. And I think that, you shouldn't just do it as a means of getting a profit or looking at it as a way of, getting more money. It should be that people value what you have to say and they want to learn more about that. So I guess that's my hot take is, yes, there's a lot of people out there that are doing this now, but they're not all created equal in terms of how the book draws you in.
Don't we know it?
Now, I know that you didn't like the feeling of being a dirty car salesman when you're pitching these books, but did your editorial team or your publishers tell you that you should have a sort of sales pitch when you're doing interviews like this one? So what's your sales pitch?
So I'll be honest with you. So shout out to Life Size Publishing. They're actually based out of Ontario, and they took a flyer on me. Listen, the founder of this organization is 22 years old, and he comes from a publishing background in his family, and he really wanted to make a new sort of dent in the publishing industry because it's very superficial. And when he approached me, he cold messaged me on LinkedIn and just said, hey, listen, and his opening line was, I have a great title for your next book. And he just started pitching me all these titles based on the research he'd done on my LinkedIn profile and my website. And I was like, this guy has got some brass. I like this. I like the opening of this. And what he doesn't know is that I use the Q principle. I always reach out to people. I utilize their strengths. And so when he messaged me, I messaged him back and said, I appreciate you cold emailing me like this. And I always respond to every message I ever receive to show, authenticity and respect, right? And I said, I'm actually being approached by many different publishers right now. I'm going to go to a couple of meetings with them and see what they have to say. But I have a bad feeling in my in the back of my mind that these places are just trying to line me up to say that I can be a top-selling author by contributing 5 or 10 pages to a collaborative book. And I'm sure you all have heard this before, but essentially what they do is they'll charge you $20,000 to $25,000 for you to be featured in 5 to 10 pages of a book where other writers are also contributing content. And because of the connections they have in the publishing industry, they can make it a top-selling book just so that you can gloat and say, I'm a New York Times best-selling author. And I said to them, I hate that process because it's the least authentic thing you could possibly do, because you're gloating about how you wrote 10 pages in a 200-page book and nobody even got to know your story. So that's exactly what happened to me, to you both. I'm not going to mention the publishers. They're very large, who approached me and said, Marco, we want you on our book. And I said, I can't do that. That's actually the antithesis of what I want to write about, which is authenticity. And so
That'd be ironic.
And so I went back to the young gentleman of Life Size Publishing, and he was shocked that I said, let's go. I'm going to take a flyer on you. You just started this company less than a year ago. Let's go. Let's do it together. You remind me of me. You're an entrepreneur. You're scrappy. You're a new Canadian. He immigrated from Pakistan, and his entire writing team is actually entrepreneurs in Pakistan. This was really important to me. He wanted to create an opportunity for entrepreneurship, for entrepreneurs and writers in his home country to have an opportunity to work with a Canadian brand. And when I heard that backstory, that he's supporting other creators around the globe to have their stamp, I was like, this is awesome. And it just is the epitome of what it is to become an entrepreneur and create something new. So I took a chance on him, he took a chance on me, and I absolutely loved the experience.
So this young guy, you could say that he creatively used his best energy on you.
That's right. That's right. He literally used the Q principle without even knowing it. And first of all, I want to address something. You know, people might think, what is this cube thing?
Yeah, break it down.
Talking
Yeah, please.
about? And like, yeah. So I don't want people to think that it's gimmicky at all. Like it is an acronym because I love acronyms, but also, you know, it stands for creatively utilize your best energy, or creatively use your best energy, however you're most comfortable saying it. And essentially what it is, it's a mantra for remembering that you don't have to be the master of all skills, that you can utilize people in your social circle who have other skill sets other than your own to achieve common goals or overcome challenges. And so this is not me saying that I reinvented the wheel. This is not me being a snake oil salesman saying I have the next best prescription for you. You know, this is just a way in which I've collected certain ways of approaching challenges that make sense in my brain. And people kept asking me while I was on stage, can you teach me more about this Q principle, because it sounds like a method that would work well for me. And so back in 2012, when I established my business, I officially, you know, trademarked the term. And as you learned in the book, I heard from a very special person about trademarking and branding, and that was Gene Simmons of the legendary rock band Kiss, who basically said to me, this cube thing is great, and if you were in the States, somebody's going to steal that from you right away, so you should definitely trademark this, you should definitely utilize this. And again, this was not for profit or anything like this. It's just that I wanted a methodology that was easy to explain to people. It's more of a tangible way on manifestation, really. And I know that that sounds airy-fairy to a lot of people, but I highly believe in manifestation, about creating the things that you want in your life, and that it's real. Like Bluetooth. We can't see that Bluetooth or Wi-Fi is happening all around us, but it exists. You're able to connect to the internet. And I think the same thing goes for manifestation. We can't see the connections that we're making with other people, but they're tangible and they're real, and they come down to a molecular level. And I truly believe that. So that's really what it comes down to. Is I want to teach people how to properly manifest by taking action.
Is that the energy that we're talking about in the book, and as you refer to it as like this kind of invisible but very probable thing that we're putting out there?
It's twofold. So it is that, it's that, but it's also how are you presenting yourself by way of your body language? What kind of energy, what kind of depiction of your personality are you displaying to other people? Because as you'll remember from the book, I said I'm a very high energy guy. And of course, when I was interviewing for jobs prior to starting my own business, that energy was being misperceived by everybody. They were like, this guy's they were like, this guy's intense, this guy's high energy. I don't know if like, is this guy
just
aggressive?
Not on your level, Marco.
No. And the thing is that also when I was nervous, it would come across very high energy to the point that they were like, how do we tone this down because of my nerves? I had to learn, to both of you, Jacob and Ramya, I had to learn how to harness that energy and almost like tame a wild horse inside of me. I had to like be able to learn breathing techniques so that I didn't come across so overly animated that it gave the wrong depiction as to who I was. And so once you can kind of master how you project energy out to the world, it really changes other people's perceptions of who you are and your intention behind any social interaction.
Now, I'm assuming that when you're talking about managing your energy and how you put yourself out there, that's dependent on the scenario that you're in, right? And so can you give us an example of how you can manage and control and be aware of the energy that you're putting out to get the best result that you want?
Yeah, so first of all, it's going to sound really silly to people who don't speak on a regular basis or don't speak in front of crowds, because obviously one of the number one fears over death actually is public speaking for most people. They would rather die than speak on stage in front of people, and it's because of our archaic sort of cave person days of if you were to approach the wrong tribe and say the wrong thing, you might get bashed over the head and that's it, right? And that's actually where it exists in our mind. mind, is that essentially we're afraid that if we get rejected by our social circle, that we're going to get cast away or even killed. And that's actually why it exists in us. So, you get those feelings like the sweaty palms, you lose track of what you were going to say, you get a foggy mind. And so controlling that energy, one of the best ways you can do that, and I always do this before any presentation I give, whether it's in front of 5 people or 500 people, is I will look at myself in the mirror and I will say, you can do this, you got this, you're awesome, okay? And like, I understand that sounds egotistical, but for me, it's not about that. It's about me visualizing myself, believing in myself, and knowing the outcomes, or what some would say, thought experiments. Create a thought experiment of people reacting positively to what you're about to share with them. And it sounds silly, but I've put it into practice so many times, and it just calms me right down. And that reminds me, okay, people don't want me to go out and fail. How many people want to go out and watch a stand-up comedian and then just watch them bomb? Nobody wants to watch someone bomb. They want to be entertained.
Yeah.
They want to laugh. They want to be entertained. So they don't want you to fail. And I think if you remind yourself that, they want you to be the best comedian, the best presenter that you possibly can be, the best person, the best pitch you could possibly deliver in business. That's what they want. And if you can say, that's what I want to deliver, and calm yourself down, it really allows for something a little bit unique and different to happen.
Marco, I want to bring up your disability and in the context of writing and your motivational speaking and everything else that you do with work. But it's one of these things where I'm so curious about your process and where and when you decide to contextualize disability in your narrative. So obviously it is part of your personal journey, but how do you do you want to let the audience in on when you decide that disability is becoming a part of the conversation intentionally, when you avoid it altogether, or was there kind of time frame where you had to decide, okay, I want to talk about my disability? A lot of us go through this, right?
Yes, 100%. And as far as the book is concerned, I mean, I let people know right out the gate that I'm a person with a disability. However, that wasn't always the case in my personal life. So yeah, I don't have an invisible disability. Mine is very visible. I'm a manual wheelchair user. And so when I walk or roll into a room, it's pretty darn obvious that I have some form of disability. You just might not know what it is yet, right? That being said, in the early stages of my career, I avoided talking about disability and accessibility related issues like the plague, because I just wanted to be seen as a human being, a human being who happens to use a wheelchair. And I wanted to be respected as an entrepreneur and a speaker, but I just so happened to use a wheelchair or just so happened to have a disability. So when I first started in the speaking game, I didn't actually talk about disability or accessibility related issues at all. I started out as a leadership coach, a leadership speaker, teaching people methodologies for making authentic connections with people in their own social circles and their own social networks, because ironically, we call social media social, yet it's sometimes the least social thing you can possibly do, because you could hide behind an avatar and become whatever person you want to be. And so I wanted people to get back to the roots, to the cause of what it means to create real connections with people, remembering to put down our screens, remembering to put down our technology, and just actually be present in the room with people that you're with, and just experience what it feels like to be in the room with other people. But as time went on, more and more people asked me, why aren't you talking more about your disability? Why aren't you talking more about your lived experience? And I said, well, it's a personal journey for everyone, whether they self-disclose in a work environment, if they have the luxury of waiting to self-disclose, or even prior to an employer seeing you. For example, if you're out in a working environment and you choose to put your disability as part of your cover letter. And the answer to that is, if it supports the work you're about to go into and your personal narrative is something that can actually help you in the situation by telling them about your disability, and you're able to frame it in such a way that it's an asset and not a disadvantage, then 100% use your disability as a way of framing how you overcome challenges, how you overcome obstacles, how you see things differently, and how that could benefit somebody. And that could even be in social environments. When you go to a party, do you want to tell people that you have ADHD, right? And things like this. Do you want to tell people that you have any form of other conditions? So it's a personal choice, but it took me a while to get there.
Sorry, you lost me at party, but I understand the concept.
Yeah, yeah. I hear you. I hear you.
At a party, people will drunkenly walk up to you and ask you about your
To
disability.
share about my
Like,
disability?
yeah,
Yeah.
you
All the
won't really
time.
get a
All the
chance
time.
to deny it or avoid it. But about the book, though, like, what do you hope people take away from it more than anything?
Well, listen, if you both have read it end to end, then you'll know that I get very vulnerable throughout the book, and I get very raw, and I share some really personal experiences. And I think the biggest takeaway I want people to get is that you don't necessarily have to be as vulnerable as I do, but just know that it's okay to share some of your personal experiences, and it's okay to kind of vocalize those things or get them out in the world in literature and share those things, because people will respect you more as opposed to hiding from the things that you think, frame you in a way that makes you look less than in society. Maybe look at it as a way of a difference in experience, a difference in opinion, a difference in the way that you navigate the world. And people might be able to gain something from that. So that's why on the back of the book, when you read the synopsis there, Jacob, this isn't just a traditional memoir or a business strategy. It's a little bit of both. And at the end of every chapter, I actually have reflective exercises that I encourage people, if you buy the book, write in the book, do the exercises that I suggest, because each of them are tied back to the theme of every chapter. And so I want this to be almost a guide that they can take with them and remind them about how to be their fullest self, their fullest potential in whatever sphere they happen to be in. They may not be an entrepreneur, they may just be getting started, or they may be nervous about, parenthood or starting a new family. Whatever the case may be, there's something in the book for everyone. And then I just hope that they see the value in that.
And how can people who want to get their hands on or their ears on, how can they get their, how can they
Yeah,
get
when
it?
do we get our ears on this?
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm excited to say that the book is planned to be launched at the end of this month. It was actually going to be launched right around today, but there were some final tweaks to the cover and to some of the content that I wanted to make that I'm working with the publisher on right now. And so I'm hoping by the end of November, the book will be available to everyone on Amazon. You can buy the paperback. There'll be a hardcover copy. And yes, I do plan on doing an audiobook that may come in the new year, just with the timing. It's about a 4.5 to 5 hour read. So it just takes some time to take those recordings in, but I'm so excited to share this. I share everything from my personal experiences with my family, with my wife, with having a child, and of course me having a disability and my insecurities around being a parent with a disability. So I really hope that people enjoy this. Go to Amazon.ca, go to Amazon.com, buy the book. It's a great stocking stuffer, and I think people will gain a lot from it.
You go first.
Are you going to be narrating the book yourself?
Yes, 100%.
Hey,
I feel like
that'll be a fun one.
Yeah.
For people to hear my actual voice and to hear me, explain through the stories, I think it's going to be very powerful. And so, yes, I do 100% plan on narrating myself. In fact, I always, when I get a book of someone else's and it's someone else narrating, like David Attenborough, I'm like, well, great voice, but this has nothing to do with David's experiences, So, this
Especially
is why
in this
I
type
think
of
it's
book, right?
important.
Something so personal.
100%.
You'd rather hear it from the actual voice of the person who wrote it.
That's right. And if people, want to, fact check me or go into my own life, they can go to my website. It's marcopasqua.com. It's my name.com. And they can learn a little bit more about my story. The information about the book will also be available there once we go live. But I'm really excited. This has been a passion of mine. It's been a labor of love, and I just can't wait for people to experience it. Not to put you both on the spot, but really quickly, what did you think of the book? I'm so curious from your perspective on the sections you read or the parts that you read. What did you think?
Yeah, and for me, like I read a lot of any kind of self-development, that kind of thing, Marco. So I do appreciate just like where the writers, the authors are coming from this book, or from the books that I read. And for you, because you're a person with a disability, because you're a familiar voice on the channel, it was really interesting getting into it. And I thought, like you said before we started recording that this book sounds a lot like you. Your wife said so, and I think that this book does definitely sound a lot like you. You sound the way you do, and you the perspectives that you share when we're speaking, when we hear you on air, when you're on other podcasts, it feels very genuine and authentic to the book, and that means that we can trust you. And that's kind of the inside scoops and the conversations behind the scenes, right? I appreciate having the chats or hearing behind the scenes of authors talk about the books that they write. Doesn't have to be self-development, but self-development I think is um a big challenge of trust for a lot of us. You
Yeah.
know, like you have the books to go off of, but then you also have, does this person really believe, do they practice what they preach, that kind of thing. So I appreciate that this whole authentic connection thing for you does feel very genuine when I read it.
On my end, I really connected with the disability angle because I am blind, and your story of getting employed at London Drugs and then working for a couple of different gaming companies like EA and Black Box Entertainment, and then getting laid off and the struggles of employment. It's things that I've dealt with myself in the past, and so the self-help advice parts of this book didn't come from a place of vapidness. It was backed up with personal experience that you could link back to your experiences and myself as well. So it was like a triangle of reinforcement in that way. And that was my favorite part of the book, honestly, amongst many other things. But Marco, we're all out of time. I want to thank you so much for coming on, and have a good one. Honestly, this book is going to do well. I really hope you do good.
I think it will as well. I've, the people in my life have said they can't wait to get their hands on it. So I'm really excited to share this with my friends and family and with the rest of the world. So thank you for taking the time to enjoy it and to be honest with me about your experiences with it so far. So thanks.
Of course. Cheers. That was Marco Pasqua, the author of From Potential to Purpose, Your Guide to Authentic Connections. That's all the time we have for this edition of AMI Audiobook Review. You can find a repeat of AMI Audiobook Review as part of AMI Today on AMI Audio every 6 hours. The show is also available on your favorite podcast platforms and on YouTube. Thanks for joining us on AMI Audiobook Review. I'm your host, Jacob Szymanski. Ramya Amuthan was with me. Have a good one.